Hello and welcome back to Crystals with Kate. I know it's been a really long time and I am so sorry, you guys. Things have been crazy with me between going back to work full time from the summer. Me and my now husband moved and we just got married last week. So with all of that being said, we will call this the start of season 2. And what better way to kick off season 2 than to talk about Samhain. So today is actually the first day of Samhain, so I figured I would give you guys a super special episode to kick off season 2 and talk all about the history of Samhain, as well as ways that we can incorporate our witchcraft into it, as well as crystal correspondences. So to get started off, we're going to talk about what Samhain is. So Samhain is an ancient pagan festival, and it did come from the Celtic tradition. Traditionally, it starts on October 31st, and it goes over into November 1st. And the goal of Samhain was to welcome the harvest and usher in that dark half of the year. At this point in the year, we've harvested pretty much what we're going to harvest for the year. So ancient cultures would kind of celebrate and thank Mother Nature and the earth for providing and for giving that last of the harvest, and kind of celebrate one last time before they go into like the darkness of the year. It's already getting dark outside. Without daylight savings time, it would be darker most of the day. This was their way of really just thanking nature for giving to them. We also know that this is when the veil is the thinnest between our natural world and that of the spirit realm. The Druids would also light community fire wheels. So fire wheels are basically a giant wheel that they would construct out of wood, and they would catch them on fire. And the goal was that would represent the sun, and these would burn in the center of the town or the village where the Druids lived. Druids would also sacrifice cattle, and they would do that over a flame. The flame would then be taken home by each individual member of the town and put into their hearth at home, and that fire would burn until it went out. Samhain was, in ancient pagan cultures, seen as mandatory, or else you would be punished by the gods because you weren't thanking them for the providing. This was your way to truly thank them. Another just little side note about Samhain is it is directly in between the fall equinox and the winter solstice. So now that you have a little bit of background on Samhain, we're going to talk about some of the more creepy aspects of Samhain. So there are a lot of monsters that are associated with Samhain. I know I'm going to butcher the names. Bear with me, guys. One of them is called Puka. It's Pukah, if anyone would like to look into it. And this was believed to be a shapeshifter, and they would receive harvest offerings from the field and kind of like take advantage of Samhain. And they are kind of seen as like this demonic being. The next one is Lady Gwen, and she was a headless woman who would wear white, and she would wander around and wait for somebody to be outside later than they should have, and she would chase you around. Dullahan is another demonic spirit, and it would appear as an impish. And often villagers would wear monster costumes or scary masks in order to not be recognized. And this helped them being avoided by the fairies and the demonic spirits. They didn't want to be kidnapped. They did not want to be taken advantage of. So if they dressed up as something spooky, they would kind of blend in. Hello to modern Halloween costumes. The next thing I think it's really important to talk about with Samhain is the Christianization of Samhain, because with everything else around ancient cultures, Christianity did have a big impact whether you are a Christian or not. The first try to Christianize Samhain was with Pope Boniface in the 5th century, and he moved it to May 13th and wanted to celebrate saints and martyrs. And it did not work. The very, very small, at the time, it was just a cult. Not being disrespectful, but at the time, it was a cult of Christianity. Did not work. This small sect of people celebrated it. But other than that, it was not successful in the pagan community. Next was Pope Gregory, about 400 years later. He moved it back to its traditional time, and he declared November 1st as All Saints' Day, and then the 31st of October was known as Hallows' Eve. and they continued these traditional pagan practices, but they had renamed them, and the purpose was to honor saints on the 1st, and Hallows Eve was when you would really be devout, and like all of these things that pagans were doing in terms of the sun and thanking nature, you would be doing, but you would be doing it with the purpose of thanking saints, and it was far more successful then. We also see that the trick-or-treating came from the ancient Irish and Scottish practices, and they slowly became introduced into Samhain as Christianity made its reaches into those areas later in time. The next really cool aspect of it is the rituals, the foods, the crystals, and also I want to talk a little bit about Wicca and Samhain, because Wicca is a religion associated with witchcraft, but not all witches are Wicca, okay? It's like not all squares are not all rectangles are squares, but all squares are rectangles. Whatever that saying is, I think I just butchered that. So with Wicca and Samhain, it had a big revival in general in the 80s with the widespread Wicca community. And it really, really focused on the communion and the honoring of the dead, and really being a holiday focused on ancestor work, which I think is really, really special. And that's honestly how I plan on spending my Samhain this year, is I'm going to really focus on spending some time with my family members that have passed on tonight, and then light a few candles. So here we are going to take a quick break, and I will be back in just a minute.
And now for a quick break to talk about the ways to support the podcast. If you are enjoying what we are doing here on Crystals with Kate, I am so very happy that you are enjoying it. I just wanted to give you a few ways that you can help support the show. The first way is by following us on TikTok and Instagram, which will be linked in my link tree below. I am a small crystal business owner. Any orders to my website or my Etsy shop would be very much appreciated. I also have a spot on my link tree for donations for divination practices, such as pendulum readings and tarot spreads. And last but not least, I do have a Patreon for our show. My Patreon has 4 tiers, and they are each named after a crystal. The first tier is the Jasper tier, and that starts at $3.33 a month. That gets you early access to podcasts, and they are absolutely ad-free. It also gives you a copy of my metaphysical notes for my crystals. Next is the Quartz layer, and that is $7.77 a month. That gives you, again, ad-free early access, and that gives you full crystal notes. So all of the things I'm talking about now, if you wanted a more detailed grimoire page, would be included. My next layer is the Fluorite layer, and that is $22.22 a month. Again, you get your full crystal notes, ad-free, and early access to the podcast. And then you also get Happy Mail from me. You get a monthly crystal mystery box, and that would be valued at about $15 to $20 worth of product. Next up, our last and highest tier is the Amethyst tier, and that is $44.44 a month. And once again, you do get full crystal notes, early access, and ad-free. And then you also get a monthly box for $35-ish worth of goodies. That is a guaranteed larger piece or jewelry. So it might be a ring or a bracelet. It may be a small tower, something that really makes this worth your money. So all of these are wonderful ways to support the show.
Alrighty, welcome back from our break. And the next thing we're going to do is move on with the ritualistic aspects of Samhain. So common rituals that are associated with Samhain include creating an altar to your ancestors, whether that be a big and elaborate thing, or maybe it is just you have a picture of them and you light a candle and you just spend a little bit of time reflecting on the relationship that you and this person had. Maybe send up some well wishes to them, maybe ask for some guidance from specific ancestors that you were close to. The next one is dancing and feasting. So with this being a festival for pagan tradition and a celebration, it was like their last celebration before they went into that really dark part of the year. So they would eat a lot. They just harvested. They would be dancing. There would be the music. So eat. Go cook something good. If you are a kitchen witch, cook with intention. And enjoy dancing. Maybe put on some goofy Halloween music and dance with like your roommates, your friends, whoever. And the last one that is a really big ritualistic part of Samhain is nature walks. So you're thanking the nature. That is the whole point behind this. You're thanking the earth for providing for you. So it'd be really, really beneficial, I think, to go get out in nature and just take a nature walk. Take a really long walk with your dog even. Just something so that you are out in nature and getting back to the roots of the holiday. Speaking of feasting and good food, there are a few things that are commonly associated with Samhain. Apples and pumpkins, obviously, they are a super big harvest around here. Now, whether that is you just eat an apple or you make fried apples or apple pie, pumpkin pie, something excellent with it. Maybe you eat the pumpkin seeds. Those have really good aspects in spell casting if you are into that side of witchcraft. And in general, any fall crops you get, a couple of the farms that we've been around, they were harvesting their soybeans and their corn recently. So if you wanted to find fun ways to incorporate that, your vegetable type crops that, like your leafy greens that are frequent and plentiful in this time of the year, may be a really good place to incorporate them. So that is our little blurb on food. The next thing I want to talk to you about, obviously, this is more my wheelhouse, is the crystal side of it. You can find crystals that'll associate with just about any aspect of anything that you want it to, but I made myself a list of some that I felt like really stood out and that I personally am really going to work with during Samhain this year, so I figured I would share that with you guys. So the first one is obsidian. With the veil being at its thinnest point, obviously you have plenty of spirits that are positive and happy and kind, but on the flip side of that, you have those that are a little bit more malicious. So I think it's really, really important to have a protective crystal. It also helps with your magic, with things like tarot and scrying. It also is helpful with your energy work because it kind of balances your outer energy, so you can kind of focus a little bit more on your inner energy. So I will definitely be working with my big old chunky piece of obsidian tonight. The next one is labradorite. Labradorite is great with your intuition. It also does have that aspect of communication with ancestors and spirits. So I think that if that is something with Samhain that you are trying to do, this is going to be an absolutely excellent crystal for you. Next up is smoky quartz. Smoky quartz kind of will help draw these spirits in. It'll help draw the spiritual energy in. And it kind of clears your communication pathways. Makes it a little bit easier. Communication won't be as weird and rocky. And then next up is amethyst. So amethyst is a very high frequency crystal. It vibrates very high. It kind of creates a little protective bubble around you. Again, with it being the thinnest part of the veil, I don't think you can ever be too safe. So I will definitely be pairing this with my obsidian tonight to really try to focus on protecting me and my family, my home, from any negative entities that may want to gain entrance. Clear quartz is really, really good at amplifying as well. It can amplify any of those things. And again, there are plenty of other ways that you can find crystals to work in. But with me focusing on my ancestor work and my spiritual communication tonight, these are really the ones I was leaning into as Samhain, and that is a very, very big part of Samhain. The next thing I wanted to talk to you guys about, and it is actually our last little bit on Samhain, is the herbs and the plants. With everything, there are these correspondences. That does not mean that they're the only ones, but these are just some common ones that I've seen passed down from ancient tradition, I've seen in Wicca, and I have just seen in terms of beliefs that have been attributed to them over time. So the first one is mugwort. So mugwort, because it is really, really good for your divination and your dream work, mugwort is associated with Samhain. Next one is pomegranates. It's really good if you want to talk to the dead, and I believe this is coming from the lore of Persephone and Hades, because that is a lot of that is coming at this time of the year as well, and that is a duo, if you work with them in the pagan culture, that I know really does appreciate pomegranate offerings. The next one would be your autumn flowers, such as marigolds and mums. As you guys know, not a whole lot is in bloom right now, but these two are. So my fiance and I actually have two really beautiful... Ooh, wait a minute. He's my husband now. I'm still not used to saying husband. It's only been a week. We have two really beautiful mums that we're going to put out with our pumpkin tonight. And then the next one is rosemary. And rosemary is really good for remembrance and helping you, like, pay tribute. And then obviously not an herb or a plant, but a pumpkin. Not a traditional way you think of an herb, but pumpkins. Pumpkins are excellent. They are very highly associated with Samhain. They are a wonderful thing to incorporate into your spell work. And honestly, they're adorable. So I am going to be carving our pumpkin tonight with my hubby when I get home from work. And I'm really excited to put that out and let that be protective for our family. Put our mums out and enjoy the beauty and wait and hope we get trick-or-treaters this year. Last year at our old place, we didn't get a whole lot of trick-or-treaters. So fingers crossed for this year. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of Crystals with Kate. And our next episode, for anyone that is curious, is going to be on grape agate. Grape agate has kind of taken the crystal community by storm. So me being a curious nerd, I really wanted to dive into it. See what I could figure out for you guys. I will see you this Wednesday. So you only got to wait 2 days for another podcast. And for our episode on grape agate. Bye, guys.